Welcome back for Chapter 3, where we'll delve more deeply into the history of racism in urban planning in the U.S. and overlay that with the history of the Albina neighborhood in Portland. At the 2021 Smart Growth America Equity Summit, Dr. Destiny De Guzman, CEO of the Thrivance Group, said this, quote, "The origin story for transportation planning in this country stems from the exploited forced labor of Black bodies and the refusal to acknowledge Black people as human beings in this country. And all of our country's highways are built upon sacred Native American burial grounds. So when we have this discussion about what it means to remove, redesign, or replace that infrastructure, we have to have a real conversation about how even that work is harmful, disrespectful, and contributes to the legacy of racism," end quote. While there are many ways to talk about community and understanding the context, we have intentionally or unintentionally caused harm in many communities, whether rural farmland, but especially in Black and Brown communities. I'll provide you some stories in the second hour of the course that will help you think about how to get curious about the values, culture, needs, trauma of any community. But now let's focus on the history of urban development and highway expansion. Who benefited and who did not, and how. Every metropolitan region in the United States, including Portland, Oregon, was subject to major segregationist tactics as it developed, including highway expansion and redlining. This racist legacy continues to affect Black and Brown communities and how the city is organized and who can travel through it easily and safely. Beth Osborne, Director of Transportation for America, told us in her interview for the book, quote, "We must remember that because of our history, even a simple question like whether to repair or rebuild infrastructure at the end of its useful life becomes a discussion about racial equity," end quote. Here, I'm going to go into the history of the neighborhood where the I-5 Rose Quarter project is taking place to show why that history is still with us today. Racist zoning practices go back to 1911 in Baltimore, Maryland, when the city passed the first ordinance restricting one racial group from buying property on a block where another racial group already lived. This practice spread throughout the South, even when segregation was technically determined as unconstitutional in 1917, with the Buchanan v. Worley Supreme Court decision. Local and regional jurisdictions found ways to continue segregationist tactics, and that was through redlining. This tactic, which you probably heard of, came out of post-Depression recovery efforts through Roosevelt's establishment of the Homeowners Loan Corporation, or HOLC, that was designed to support borrowers who couldn't afford payments on interest-only mortgages. It helped many people across the U.S. build generational wealth through homeownership. However, this was largely extended to white people. Local real estate agents worked with HOLC to draw up maps of major metropolitan areas that color-coded levels of mortgage lending risk. Green was, quote, best, blue was still desirable, yellow was definitely declining, and red was deemed hazardous. This is an image of the HOLC map of Portland, Oregon. Thanks to the Mapping Inequality Project of the University of Richmond, we have these maps for our use. In Portland, the lower Albina neighborhood, highlighted here, was where the majority of the city's Black population lived. The entire neighborhood is red, thus it was redlined, which was considered hazardous, according to HOLC, and advised against giving mortgages to people seeking to buy houses in this area. The language used in these color-coded designations was explicitly about race. The yellow and red areas were predominantly communities of color or immigrant communities. Those, quote, redline neighborhoods were predominantly Black. The clarifying remarks in the original map noted, quote, "This area constitutes Portland's melting pot and is the nearest approach to a slum district in the city. 3/4 of the Negro population of the city reside here, and in addition, there are some 300 Orientals, 1,000 Southern Europeans, and Russians," end quote. In these redline areas, residents wouldn't be able to secure mortgage loans. By rejecting loans for Black and Brown people, the federal government, in partnership with local and regional governments and mortgage companies, helped create the enormous wealth gap between white households and Black and Brown households that we see today. Because homes are one of the greatest financial assets an individual or family could have, it is the link to our cumulative wealth over time, or our generational wealth. And because Black and brown people weren't given the opportunity to buy homes, they weren't afforded that asset of wealth building. Thus, today, you see a huge gap in generational wealth between white and Black households. This is an important example of how the racist legacies of the past stick with us. But before we move on to how this applies now, let's continue to discuss the next era of planning. The redlining era then led to the urban renewal era. In the middle of the 20th century, the US government built 64,000 miles of interstate and other freeway expansion through funding of up to 90% of the development through the 1956 Federal Aid Highway Act. To build out these roadways, the public agency had to acquire the right-of-way. The cities or counties or states called these areas, quote, blighted, a legal term that then devalued the land. The devalued land was then acquired through eminent domain to achieve a public good or investment, sometimes even handed over to private companies. Neighborhoods were then razed to make way for the new infrastructure. These were often the same areas in which local, state, and federal government, by way of programs such as Holk's redlined maps, had continuously disinvested. The term blighted is deeply rooted in racist ideology. A 2016 opinion article on Grid penned by Eastwood Friends and Neighbors Coalition in Philadelphia noted that, quote, according to Pennsylvania urban redevelopment law, 7 criteria are used to determine whether blight exists in an area, but only one of those criteria needs to be met to establish a property or an area as blighted, end quote. Some of those reasons include public nuisance according to codes, unattractive nuisance such as wells, shafts, unsafe fences or structures, structure that's a fire hazard, structure with no utility hookup, vacant, unimproved property, unoccupied property with delinquent taxes, vacant but not tax delinquent but has not been rehabilitated within 1 year, or abandoned property. So any of these reasons can be used to deem a property as blighted, which gives the local and regional authorities a reason to get rid of the property, to evict the residents, or to raze the land. And so they are able to take it and use it for development such as projects like highways. The writer and social justice activist James Baldwin famously said, quote, urban renewal means Negro removal, end quote, which became a rallying cry for urban renewal protests during that period. During this era, around 1958, about 73% of Portland's Black residents lived in the Albina neighborhood. Also being determined as the blighted section of the city, it was ground zero for urban renewal. The picture on the left is an aerial photo of the neighborhood taken in 1955 before urban renewal. All of those houses in the foreground were demolished by 1960. And then between 1950 and 1970, even more of the community had been destroyed to make way for the Memorial Coliseum, the Portland Public Schools administrative buildings and maintenance yards, a professional basketball stadium, a hospital, the first enclosed mall on the West Coast, and a convention center. On the right, you can see the completed I-5 project, which was built as a part of the urban renewal process. That picture was taken in 1965. All said and done, nearly 2,000 homes in a thriving, connected Black community were destroyed for large buildings and a freeway. Here's an example of what was lost. The illustration on the left is the Hill Block building at North Russell Street and North Williams Avenue. It once sat at the center of the neighborhood until the mid-1960s. That street was the center of Portland's thriving jazz scene and was the center of Black community. The illustration on the right depicts the spot today, where the Hill Block building once stood. It's now an intersection with essentially nothing on it. It's a desolate, heavily car-trafficked area that Emmanuel Hospital never used and lay vacant until recently, when the hospital turned it over to a new land trust with a community board that is redeveloping the site for Black management. Imagine the anguish that this caused people from that community to see an empty space that once housed their vibrant community. In a 2017 presentation for the Diverse and Empowered Employees of Portland, Walida Amarisha, assistant professor in the Black Studies Department and the director of the Center for Black Studies at Portland State University, said as she presented on this very history, quote, "The very lived reality was that under that concrete was the heart of the Black community," end quote. This history wasn't that long ago, and people still alive today remember that displacement. The city is organized as it is because of that harm and because of that displacement. And so you can see why local community members, especially Black community members, would be opposed to yet another project in this neighborhood that didn't include them. While the approach that the Oregon Department of Transportation took wasn't overtly racist, like redlining and urban renewal, the lack of intentionality causes similar harm. More recent issues around gentrification can highlight how harm can be done inadvertently. This backdrop image is a more dramatic scene of gentrification. Big, shiny new building right next to the older historic homes. But they also come in the form of this image from Portland. Trendy coffee shops, boutiques, and shops coming into the neighborhood, like this photo from the Alberta Arts District in Northeast Portland, which is currently an example of the gentrification in the city. In the 1990s, small businesses, mostly white-owned, started to pop up in this neighborhood not far away from Albina. This historically Black neighborhood had been impacted by the urban renewal process in that highway traffic rerouted people around the neighborhood, which caused an economic decline similar to that of Lower Albina. In the 1990s, after years of disinvestment, Alberta's Black population began to decline significantly and was being replaced by people of the, quote, creative class. Richard Florida's 2002 book, The Rise of the Creative Class, detailed how local economic policies were focused on attracting people in creative industries who would then drive economic growth. Portland was one of those communities. In a 2005 Willamette Week article, reporter Jack Dundas said, quote, "Portland is kicking butt, attracting hordes of college-educated 24 to 34-year-olds at a time when that group is shrinking nationally," end quote. And those hordes were specifically whiter and wealthier, driving up housing prices and development demand that then displaced some residents in places such as the historically Black community of Alberta. While community improvements can ultimately be a force for good to reinvest in a neighborhood, without considerable effort and regulation, existing residents may be displaced. At the time, Portland didn't have sufficient policies that ensured affordable housing remained in these neighborhoods as housing grew. And as investments in public transit and bike lanes across the region put Portland on the map as a green city, the city was laying the groundwork for displacing people of color and lower income residents who wouldn't be able to afford the skyrocketing rents and mortgages in these newly developed areas. Lynn has also talked about how she had recently come to terms with her own unwitting complicity in creating gentrification in Black and low-income communities through transportation land use practices that she touted nationally, specifically through her advocacy for Portland's light rail system. The East Side Banfield Light Rail project in Portland, which first received federal planning approval in 1980, now connects the greater Portland metropolitan region through 5 MAX, or Metropolitan Area Express, light rail lines and had some huge benefits for land use and environmental impact. But the long-term impacts of gentrification were intensified because elected officials, developers, and planners at the time were focused only on building new affordable housing, not on preserving existing affordable housing. The investment in transportation improvements created an increase in land value. It doesn't matter if it is a highway interchange or a light rail station, they all come with a trade-off. Learning about these complexities firsthand shifted Lynn's thinking from either or, which could be good land use and environmental policies or good racial justice policies, to both and solutions, where we're creating better land use and environmental policies by combining them with racial justice policies. The concept of environmental justice in transportation policy is how they come together. So that is a very brief rundown of the history of systemic racism in Portland's transportation and policy projects. These harmful outcomes came from both overt and inadvertent discrimination. As we noted in the book, Lynn talks about how she was complicit in the inadvertent harm done through seemingly progressive policies. As she began to realize this history and understand the harm caused by the industry, she's come to believe in the responsibility of everyone in this profession to not only understand this history, but to take what they've learned and apply it to their work moving forward. In the next chapter, we'll take some time to reflect on what this means for your work.